are this morning convening on the subject of counterinsurgency, and particularly counterinsurgency in Iraq. We are pleased at Georgetown School of Foreign Service and our Center for Peace and Security Studies to be joining with the Navy Center for Asymmetric Warfare to sponsor this morning's sessions. My name is Bob Gallucci. I'm the Dean of the School of Foreign Service. And we have as a first panel generally on the topic of counterinsurgency. Three panelists, their bios are in front of you, but I would be shocked and depressed if you didn't know who they were without me introducing them. So I will say a few words about each. John Esposito, and we haven't discussed the order, but I would suggest, gentlemen, that we just go in this order. John Esposito is a university professor of religion and international affairs here. He's also the founding director of our Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding. He is internationally known for his writings and for his presentations as someone who consumes much of what John presents. I don't know whether he would be pleased to hear this or not, but in addition to being a scholar, his writings are accessible even to a dean, and I've always been grateful for that.
Has lots of pictures.
That's right. And some of them you can even color. They're very nice. So John, we're happy to have you with us this morning. Speaking second, Colonel T.X. Hames. His bio is there as well, 30 years in the Marine Corps, as it says, serving at all levels in the operating forces. And then there is, of course, a sentence which I'm sure he takes great pleasure in having included, and it says, he never served in the Pentagon headquarters Marine Corps or a joint staff. We fully appreciate that, Colonel. And the third speaker, Dr. Bruce Hoffman, is relatively new to the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University. We are pleased to have him here. As it says, he's been in the field of studying terrorism for some 30 years. He came to us from RAND. He has what is, I think, generally considered to be the basic and standard work, just revised inside terrorism on the topic. So I think we are very, very fortunate to have these three speakers. I'm looking forward to their comments, and I'm looking forward equally to the exchange that will follow. John.
Thanks very much. I'm delighted to be here, and I'll get right to my comments. I've been asked to kind of address a number of issues that put into context the role of Islam religion with regard to insurgency, and put that in the context of the broader Muslim world. Let me begin with the bottom line. The bottom line, which I think should be a no-brainer, but there's still some debate about it among different people, is that the primary cause it has to do with political grievances, with the issue of occupation, power, distribution of political power, not with religion or bad theology. But religion plays an important role, and I'll refer to that in a second. But if you look at the studies of Robert Papp dying to win, and you look at many other studies, for example, of suicide bombing, what generally emerges is, however different the groups are, the primary driver is occupation, or the perception of occupation. And then religion becomes a way to frame that context. A recent report by the UN Alliance of Civilizations, which was based on hearings with experts as well as sending people to do research in the field, concluded that the primary driver is politics. A recent Gallup World Poll that I'm associated with, particularly that part of the Gallup World Poll, which is a poll of 1 billion Muslims, and we call it, Can You Hear Me? Listening to the Voices of a Billion Muslims. That poll makes it clear when you, for example, look at If you look at 1 billion Muslims and you ask them a variety of questions that have to do with their view of the world, their view of their political situation, their view of their economic situation, their view of the West, the view of America in particular, when you break them out, we broke them out into what we call moderates and potential radicals. Now, the criterion for that was, did they think that 9/11 was completely justified? So the potential radicals are not people who, we're not interviewing bin Laden and crew. We're interviewing people who may be predisposed to be sympathetic to terrorists, or who may be more open to being recruited. When you actually look at the moderates and the potential radicals, there's very little difference when it comes to issues of religion. And when you look at potential radicals, often in terms of a significant number of them, they tend to be better educated. They actually tend to be more optimistic. But they feel more intensely concerns about America's role in particular and the West's role more generally with regard to domination, invasion, and preventing real self-determination. Okay. So I want to emphasize the political. Now, what about the role of religion here? I think that, in fact, religion does provide the framework for many people. It provides a source of identity. And when I say identity here, I don't necessarily mean that it has to do necessarily with religious practice. For example, if you think of Northern Ireland, or you think of Sri Lanka, the Tamil Tigers and the Sinhalese, while some can be identified in these two different examples as Catholic, Protestant, Sinhalese, or Tamil, often for many of them, that identification is part of their basic identification within their society. Whether or not they are specifically religiously observant may or may not be the case. Religious symbolism also has come to play a great role, as we all know, as a legitimator, a motivator, and a mobilizer. And this is true for movements, whether they're mainstream or they're extremist. We can get into this in discussion if you like, but over the years I've not only studied but interviewed and known leaders of major mainstream Islamic movements from Egypt to Indonesia, but also of groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad Palestine. And again, for many of them, even though they may frame what they're doing Islamically and they're responding, they will situate it Islamically, the reality of it is that the primary driver for them will be occupation or will be a repressive government. Then religion kicks in. You think about Osama bin Laden. And when did he sort of turn against, let's say, the Saudi government? It had to do with the American-led coalition coming in. And when Osama bin Laden, and if you read bin Laden's speeches, it's political grievances that he fronts. Then he uses religion to frame and legitimate. So it's not that religion doesn't play a role, but it's not that, but my point is bad theology isn't what becomes the primary cause. Just as, and if you say bad theology, and the risk is you wind up searching for easy, quick fixes, the Wahhabis. Or now it's the Salafis. We need new terms. We just sort of reinvent. It's like if you're in the field of English literature and you're writing a dissertation, what can you write on? So you figure out new ways to reconfigure it. But the reality of, so we talk about the madrasas. The reality of it is if you look at the attackers of 9/11, if you look at 7/7, if you look at Madrid, if you look at a lot of situations, generally these folks are not graduates of madrasas. So I think it's important to often keep an eye on the political side of things.